time.
As soon as there was a dog barking, I'd never noticed that before.
Oh, yeah? Very nice.
Look at that. We got an intro and
So
everything.
before people start slowly coming in,
Trickling in.
Yeah, trickling in. Also, please let us know if you can't hear us or see us or any of the other stuff that sometimes happens. Let me see
What
here.
did that say? Sorry, something went wrong. I
That
didn't
was-
like the looks of that.
That was on Facebook.
Okay. Does that mean something went wrong on Facebook?
Well, I logged me out of the account, but we don't need to be in there. It's just because I just restarted my laptop.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You should
Dinner
sell
fash.
those glasses on Etsy.
Dinner fash yourself.
Excuse me?
Dinner fash yourself.
Okay. What are you saying?
Don't worry about it. So what
Okay.
does God say? Dinner fash yourself.
Okay. I have no idea what you're saying. Anyways, hey gang. I don't know who's all here yet, but welcome to what's the name of it? TGD's Q&A Wednesday. We're trying to do this every single week. We've been doing it at 4 o'clock, but now we're thinking about moving it to 5 o'clock, which 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We're also supposed to have some kind of crazy storm come in. So we'll see
If we disappear.
how long we're here for. What's the warning here? Western Wash faces severe storm threats today. How to stay safe.
We have a question.
Hang on one sec. Weren't we supposed to get like 2-inch hail, didn't you say?
Yeah, but it was North Seattle, so I don't know if it will come all the way
Oh,
up
okay.
here.
All right, well, we'll see. We'll see how long we can hold on. What kind of question do we have?
Do y'all
Yes, ma'am.
That's embarrassing. Do you all train for good nail trim behavior?
Well, that sounds like a you question.
If it's something specifically that is being asked, then yes, we do. In general, with all of our board and trains.
What you mean by that is if a client who's doing training with us, just the way it was worded was a little like just make sure.
Yeah, if it's part of the reason why they are here.
Right,
So
if they want that.
Yeah, if they're here because they want to do off-leash reliability, but the dog is terrible for getting baths and nail trims done, then we do.
Yeah.
And so it's something we ask in our questionnaire. So we have a questionnaire that goes out before people, as people are signing up with us. And there's questions about grooming and the vet and handling and a bunch of other questions too. And so we see that in there for when we do go to groom a dog, we know more or less whether the dog is good with that or not.
Right.
But if it's something
because we bathe every dog before they go home.
Right, yeah, because we go out to parks almost every day. We go hiking like by the lake and different places because we're now more a bit, we live outside town proper, a bit more rural-ish. And so when we go out to parks, the dogs just get muddy because they're living their best Pacific Northwest life.
Yeah, because it's raining all the time. And
yeah.
For sure. What else you got?
I'm trying to open. There we go. Okay. Let's see.
Well, while they're loading up some questions, let's see. Do we have anything interesting to talk about?
I'm gonna open up Facebook. Anything interesting?
So we've got.
I feel like we're pretty boring people.
What's that?
I feel like we're pretty boring. We're just like.
No, I'm talking about.
Oh, you mean the business?
Yeah, it's not about our personal lives.
Destination.
Okay, so what we have 2 new programs on the Shadow program. I'll fill on some of the space until folks show up. So I fixed this and it's still not right. That's so. Oh man.
How many training versus boarding dogs do you usually have on average?
Now I'm freaked out because that's still on there. That's not.
Yeah, let's fix it once we.
Yeah, I was going to announce what's going on.
How many training versus boarding dogs do you usually have on average?
What is it like?
6, 7.
6, yeah, somewhere around 6-ish training dogs, and then typically like 1 or 2 boarding
Yeah,
dogs. Not a
sometimes we have 1, sometimes 2, and sometimes on holiday time we get all boarding dogs and we get training dogs. But yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common thing with everybody.
yeah.
Yep. So make sure that there's something to share. So it's not just the air.
Oh no.
What's that?
Mm.
Yeah, hey. All right. So we added a reactivity. What am I calling it? It's got like a fancy name.
Is it the reactivity shadow?
That's reactivity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, hang on 1 sec. Reactivity shadow program. So if you want to come and learn everything ins and outs, top to bottom, about how we address, tackle, and are successful reactivity, extreme stuff, all the way through to the mild stuff. We're doing a reactivity only, so first ever just focused on reactivity shadow program, and that is August 25th and through August 29th. So 5 days here in Bellingham. And anybody who's curious about it, just contact at thegooddogway.com. Contact at thegooddogway.com. So first time we're ever doing that, and we've also got an e-collar program for you. So just some new stuff that's coming up, which is pretty cool, pretty exciting, and the reactivity shadow program I'm pretty excited about. It's just like a very specific focus and on a topic we can just dive super deep into. So very cool.
And
Yes.
my dog is on an e-collar, and I've noticed that she's way more reactive on leash than not.
That's very, very, very common. So there's tons of dogs that when you take them off leash, they'll be absolutely normal. And then there are dogs that on leash will be absolutely reactive. And that can come from a number of for a number of reasons, right? So now, if you've got the bratty, snarky dog who doesn't have proper respect for the person that's holding the leash, then what's going on?
It's Francis playing the door stopper.
Okay. So if you've got a bratty, entitled, snarky dog, a lot of times what happens when you put leash on is that dog can't go over and meet the dogs that it wants to meet, and so they call that frustration-based reactivity, which I just call asshole reactivity. I'm sorry, or bratty reactivity. It's just a dog being being a brat, and it's a byproduct of lots of rules that have been pushed, and the dog believes that it can just be how it wants to be. And there are other dogs that are more insecure or fearful, and when they're on a leash, they feel trapped. They can't get away. They can't do cool stuff as far as if a dog was to, even if a dog's not encroaching on their space, it's as they're walking, they know, even if the dog's 20 feet away, they still know that they're stuck, they're trapped on a leash, and that can make dogs really, really nervous, really insecure. So the question would be, if your dog is off leash, does your dog go romp and joyously go play with all the other dogs really well? If that's the case, you probably have an excited / bratty dog who's being snarky and bratty on leash. If you have a dog that, when you take them off leash, isn't reactive, but is concerned, worried, and keeps their distance, or is very, very choosy about what kind of social interactions they'll have, and is kind of timid about it, then most likely you have the other option, just the insecure / yeah.
How do you help an anxious dog navigate change? Recently had visitors and dogs in her family have since seen some regression in her training.
That one more time.
How do you help an anxious dog to navigate change? Recently had visitors and dogs at her family have since seen some regression in her training.
Just go back to basics. That's really the simplest way to go. Go back to basics, maybe things up a bit more structure, right? So if the dog's anxious, the best thing you can do for anxious dogs, a dog in for training and the dog's super anxious, just a ton of structure, and what that will do is start to override all the noisy stuff in the dog's brain about what do I do here, what do I do here, what about this option, what about this choice. We just want to remove all that stuff. We want to remove all the options and all the choices. And a lot of people feel bad about that because they're removing options and removing choices. And then they equate that to removing freedom and making the dog sad. But if you think about it from a human perspective, if you were super overwhelmed, super anxious, and didn't know how to navigate and make a decision about stuff because you had so much stuff, and I was like, don't worry, I don't want you to worry about any of that stuff. I'm going to tackle it. I've got all the stuff covered. All you have to do is this, this, and this. You'd be like, so that's what I'd recommend for your dog that you're seeing be a bit more anxious. Go back to highly structured stuff, and I would add in a ton of duration place command, just like a couple hours, boom. Maybe take a break, let the dog potty, get some water, whatever, and then more duration, then some downtime. I just did a post. This would be a really good post for you, actually. The Okay, so this post is 3 days ago. Should be Monday, Sunday.
No.
Sunday or Monday, it doesn't matter. Go to Instagram or Facebook and just look up a post, and it's called State of Mind Training Tips. And it literally gives you an outline from 1 through 12 different things to tackle for better, more healthy state of mind stuff. And it's basically a rough outline of what we do here. So that's what I'd recommend to get you back in a good space. See myself like hang out, dance around.
Nothing else.
No questions? Cool. That's all right. We can talk. So
Well, I'm sure more perhaps watching will empathize with having to do taxes right now since tax season is here. So I've been just drowning in paperwork with that and then building a website, things like that.
Okay.
Happy parties training.
Yeah. So we got a dog in. What is she again?
There's a question.
Just let's finish the conversation.
Okay, so she is 4.5 months old now. She's a Leonberger. She is ginormous.
And I learned that Leonbergers are a cross between Newfies and Saint Bernards, which I didn't know.
Yeah, obviously. So they're their own breed, but that's not the breed.
Okay. Did they turn into something different?
What?
Anyways, so yeah, she's huge. What is she? You said
45 months.
No, how many months?
1.5 months.
4.5 months, yeah. And she's big, and when she goes out for potty breaks, she loves to try and drag everybody around the supermarket. But she's also, we're trying to get her on a really, really strict potty program.
She had a UTI that we're trying to medicate right now.
Yeah. So, anyways, what's the question?
Okay. Our dog is very anxious, skittish on walks, and out in public. We are taking her more places to expose to different environments. How long before you would expect we see improvement in fitness?
That's a really, really, really difficult question. Depends on the severity of the dog. We always share the example of our dog, Billy Brown, cattle dog that we got, she was like 10 weeks, I think she showed up. And so, great breeder. We saw her on video and saw her, when the difference of all the different, the litter and picture. And when she got to us, she was super insecure, super nervous, really, really flighty. And so we just dove in. And we started training right away. She was super nervous about me, but we started taking French Quarter around Barony down in New Orleans, which, if you know those areas, they're super, super busy, super crazy places, super, super crazy, super busy areas. And so she was on a prong collar like straight away.
12 weeks, yeah.
12 weeks. And then we moved to e-collar. I can't remember what, 16 weeks, something like that.
16 weeks.
Yeah. And so we just took her out, and like the progress was really slow. How I bet you'd be challenged to even try and come up with like how
It
like
took a
when
it took her almost exactly a year to properly potty train
okay,
because she would come out of the crate, run to a dog bed, and pee on it.
because she was so nervous.
And I mean, she was nervous, but I think that was actually like that patterning of sorts where she got into her head that,
Well, but she used to run away from me and then run
oh,
on.
with me,
Oh
she, if
yeah,
I would just like do stuff with her, she would go to place and just pee, always on a
yeah.
dog bed. Um, but then we went to Chatsworth, and then it just magically kind of just
So you
disappeared.
just have to move. You have to move across the country.
Yeah.
No, but as far as where she's at now, I mean, it took a good couple of
It
years.
took about a year for her to be better with you.
Mhm.
And then about by the time she was about two, that's when she started being
Just more stable and calm in general,
yeah.
more social. But she was also young, and so she was maturing, and that had something to do with it. Now, with your dog, I would be lying if I tried to give you any kind of estimate, any kind of guess on that stuff. But was it nervous and severe, like fearful stuff, right?
Mhm.
And
She
one more time, just the very beginning of
Ernie's mom is watching. Ernie bird. And our dog is very anxious, skittish on walks and out in public. We're taking her more places to explore different environments. How
Gotcha.
long before you would expect to see improvement in fearfulness?
So once again, I can't tell you the timeline on that, but what I can say is the better you are with how strict you are with the structure and the rules. If you take a nervous, insecure, flighty, unsure dog out on a walk and you don't give them precise information, precise inputs, and use the best tools to communicate with them and hold them accountable, not like bad dog accountable, but accountable for like here, be in this position. Use the training. Think about it this way. I always try to explain to clients this way. You want dogs that are in that headspace to what's the word I like to use? Just put it in the simplest language possible. To listen to the training, not to the noises, not to the stuff going on in their heads, right? So if I've got a nervous, insecure, fearful dog, I'm going to take them and I'm going to have them heel exactly in a perfect, immaculate heel position. I'm not going to let them deviate. Even if their heads are moving around and things are going on like that, it's like, boom, you've got to be here. Why? Not because it's going to look pretty, not because it's going to impress your friends to have your dog in a perfect heel, but because it's going to occupy your dog's brain to be like, I have to hold this position. And if they deviate, if they start to listen to things they're worried about and speed up or veer over this way or whatever, they get corrected. And that's not you're a bad dog correction. That's, hey, I need you to hold this position secretly because it's what's best for you. The dog isn't going to know. The dog is just going to be like, okay, I have to hold this position. You being the smart human, by having them hold that position, they're actually going to get better. So they'll focus more on the training, less on the noises in their head, and that will keep the anxiety reduced to a tremendous amount. And then you have to make sure that you're advocating to the dog that no people or anything else, no dogs, nothing is coming up and pressuring your dog. So if your dog is worried about the world and then the world is allowed to encroach and pressure them, then your dog is going to get your dog's fears are going to be affirmed that the world is a scary place. Your job is to say, no, listen to me, do this, don't bark, don't whine, don't veer, don't try and skedaddle away. But then the other half of the deal is so I actually have a post called The Deal. And half the deal is like, you have to do this stuff, dog. And then you, human, I have to make sure that I advocate for you and don't let anything come in and pressure you inappropriately. It doesn't mean that you don't expose them to pressure and appropriate pressure down the line, what they can handle, what they can tolerate. But initially, you absolutely have to make sure that you're holding your dog to a high standard and you hold the world to the highest standard so your dog can go, okay, I'm not so freaked out, I'm not so afraid, and nothing bad is happening. Okay, I'm gonna live through this, and you live through that. And so the other part of this, just to close it out, is also the genetic component. And so dogs that are exceptionally genetically predisposed to nervy, fearful, insecure stuff, um, you can definitely hit a ceiling where all the best training in the world, all the best work, all the best curriculum rules and all that stuff can still have you hitting a spot where you don't get so far. So the goal is to try and find that sweet spot. Push, 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 see what you can get. And then also be realistic as you're pushing, which is a really tough balance to strike, but that's what you're looking for. Push, 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 but also make sure that we're not being unrealistic and unfair to the point where the dog is unable to perform and succeed. So,
Kim says, hey guys from Southern Ireland. Kim Carter from the Shadow Program.
hey, Kim, how you doing?
And Caroline says, hi.
Hi, Caroline.
Caroline. Have a 92-year-old client in a senior
I
living with
thought
a
they were going to say 92-year-old dog.
It would be amazing.
That's
That's the dream. Have a 92-year-old client in a senior living with a small dog. New dog used to grass patch once.
What?
New dog used grass patch once. Now only parties on walks. She wants dog to use grass patch if you have no walker available. Suggestion.
Man, I only had to deal with that once as a client who had a grass patch for the dogs. She didn't want them to use it. She was using that because she couldn't get them down the stairs. I actually had to train her to Pyrenees to walk down the stairs. That was back in the day. So the dog is with a 92-year-old man at an assisted living.
92-year-old person.
Or person at an assisted
senior living.
Okay, that's where I'm headed. Sorry.
No.
And so there was something else in there though. So besides the grass patch.
New dog.
I don't understand what the new dog part is.
Yeah, I guess you just got the dog, used a grass patch once.
Okay, so she's not saying there's a second dog. Like she's saying
but the dog
just
will only go on walks, but the person can't always walk the dog. They want the dog to use the grass patch.
I mean, the only option for that is like you're doing like reverse crate training or reverse potty training in some ways. And
it's on 12th floor.
Yeah. So then that's a tough one. What that means is that I would not be taking the dog out for walks, potty breaks, things like that. The dog has to just use the grass stuff, and so you just have to let nature run its course, which is the dog has to load up and need to go potty, whichever one or two, and then you have to take the dog over periodically to that spot and give a command. It doesn't mean the dog's going to do it on command, but you want to associate a certain word or phrase with it. We say go potty rather than like telling dogs break, because I want them to do a specific thing. So go potty and then take the dog over there and wash your fingers. And if it doesn't happen then, take the dog back, put the dog somewhere where the dog is not going to want to go potty. So you can hold them, like if the dog's going to be in a small crate, and then take them back out. 20 minutes later, put them there. It's going to be a bit of a pain to make that happen, but that's basically the approach. It's just, here's the spot I need you to go. So in order for that to happen, I need you to go potty, and then I need to take you over there a bunch of times until that lines up and where I take you there when you need to go potty, when you actually go, and then I say, good dog, and then we continue that and we'll just try and pattern and cross your fingers. Thing is, a lot of dogs are going to naturally prefer to be going potty on walks. So you're working against that one. But it doesn't mean you can't make it happen.
Okay. The prior comment about the anxious dog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, truthfully, we probably are not using corrections enough for the mental distractions. Just feeling guilty, I guess.
Yeah. So that's a super common one. And that's why I tried to insert that language about we're not using the corrections because the dog is being a bad dog. We're using the corrections to help the dog. You have to really reframe it, because if you think about it, it's like punishing my dog and my dog can't help it because they're freaked out. It's just going to make you feel guilty, make you feel terrible, and you're not going to do it. But if you view it in what it really is a gateway to help your dog improve, then it has a very different feel to it, very different flavor. So that's how I would frame it. That's how I would look at it. Um, need to stop.
I'm checking comments.
Okay, you know, my focus is horrible. So what was I saying? Um, oh, just reframing it, right? So it's super, super important. I was just talking with a client the other day about this who was struggling with the exact same thing. They have a very, very, talking about Brutus, right? They have a very
Yeah.
nervous but super sweet Roddy, and one of their owners was struggling with holding him accountable. And I was actually using the language accountable, and I think that actually was counterproductive. So what we had to do is reframe it, not not to lie to ourselves, but to actually reframe it with actual better language, which is he's getting stuck in a negative headspace. He needs our help. We can't talk to him. We can't massage him through it. We're on a walk, and we need to help get in there with a tactile information. And so you can actually use e-collar or prong collar to get the dog's head out of wherever they're stuck, and then get them back into what they need to be doing. And the best way to do that is to use obedience, which is a pattern performance or pattern behavior, and then hold them to the standard of what that is. And then hold them to that standard once again, frame it correctly in your head, hold them to that standard, not because you want them to look pretty, and if they deviate, they're not getting corrected because they're a bad dog, but because we're trying to help them gain confidence. And we know that if we allow them, like you were saying, that you're probably not correcting it. We had to correct so much with our dog Billy because she was so worried about everything going on. When we were in the French Quarter with her head was like, trying to turn around, spin around. Like, no, correction. Like, minor like head, orientation towards stuff, fine. But when there would be like major things or spinning around, over the top, unnecessary stuff, had to be corrected. So she would let that stuff go and hold herself to a higher standard of, okay, this is hard, but I'll do it and I'll try and push through. Because here's the thing, if we don't hold them to that standard, they'll just do what's easier. What's easier is just going to be a lot of motion. It's going to be a lot of just movement, chaos like that, which is a reflection of what's happening up here. Or we can counter that, push back against that, hold them accountable in the most positive way, get the best state of mind out of that. So better about it, and you'll get better results too. Okay, cool. So you're doing taxes, and is that a lot of fun?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that stuff is done now.
Yeah.
So that's done. Now I'm finalizing the website and things like that.
Awesome. But so have you been working with a bookkeeper along?
Our most amazing bookkeeper of
Yeah.
ever that anybody would ever have.
I recommend everybody who's got their own business, if you can get a bookkeeper out to help you out, unless you enjoy it and are super good at the stuff. I most certainly wasn't. And so bookkeeper and a CPA is absolutely going to go with you to try and ensure that you've got all your
Ducks in a row.
ducks in a row, T's crossed, I's dotted, all of that stuff. That's
the first time I heard you say T's crossed and I's dotted, I was thinking of T's crossed and I's dotted. And it took me forever to be like, why is he saying that? It makes sense.
a terrible thing.
Until I thought about actual letters.
Yes. T's cross your eyes.
Yeah, what else is happening? So spring is up on us. In here in the Pacific Northwest.
Yep.
We are hard at reseeding our lawn right now. We are using clover seeds. We don't have just a grass lawn yard. For one, because in the spring and summer you get all the bees and all the butterflies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also nice to look at the lawn with some flowers and it's just boring grass. It's also way more sturdy. So if any of you guys need a good recommendation, use clover seeds.
Okay.
And also, can you see how white my face is? The
Mhm.
sun is shining directly on me, and I just look like a shiny white piece of.
Look how tan I look.
Come over here. There. I kept
I'm gonna say
wondering
this is a good, this is a good side to be on.
like
Um,
a white sheet of paper. And
So
my eyes are also tired. And what else, Sean? What have you been working on post-wise recently?
hmm, lots of stuff. We just put up, or we like there's a special team,
I was gonna say.
a special team working on posts. Um, so I just put up a couple posts on reactivity, and that got a lot of attention. Showing Peanut and Penelope, super vocal, um, the super vocal Doberman, and then Casey, who is the bratty Pitty. And this one always gets people upset when I talk about what's actual reactivity. And technically, yes, our dogs like Casey, if you watch the video where it shows the 3 different dogs being reactive, is Casey reactive technically? Yes. The the definition for reactivity is what an over the top excessive reaction to stimuli that's just abnormal and unnecessary. But the majority of people out there have dogs like Casey who will take food when a trigger goes by and people are walking around playing this game of like distract the dog with food rather than just simply like my whole point of that set of videos and the posts that I put up. I probably posted it 2 or 3 times over the last 3 or 4 years, which is if your reactive dog will take food instead of looking at the trigger, then you don't have a reactive dog. You have a brat who's gaming the system, which is you. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's because I see so many people opting either because they've been taught by unfortunate trainers to use food as a distraction, or they have gravitated towards that because they don't want to correct their dog and they would rather use food and it feels more emotionally comfortable. And people are more than welcome to, of course, live with their dog and train their dog however they want. But it's pretty challenging to watch people doing overly unnecessary complex training protocols with a dog that you can clearly see is like one correction away. And I'm not talking something major, one correction away from like, oh, I didn't know the rules. Got it. Cool. I'll be on my best behavior. Those dogs are just opportunistic rats because they've been allowed to be. And so I don't put them in the actual reactivity category, even though like technically they're reactive, but I don't because they're just being briny. And so, anyways, those posts have gotten a lot of attention and a lot of questions and a lot of interaction. And I think it's an important thing to explore. And it's the reason why I said like, here's a reactive dog, like real deal stuff. Here's a reactive dog, completely different but real deal stuff. Here's Casey. She's being she's lunging at a dog. Most people would be like, that's a reactive dog. She the next day she went out and she walked by dogs all day long without a single reaction, just because we corrected her a couple times for being silly, being goofy. And she was like, "Oh, okay, I'm not supposed to do that." It's like for me, I just don't put that in the reactivity category.
I can't see anything.
And yeah, you get some sunshine.
Help.
What we got? I saw stuff coming up.
No, there's people joining, but no questions.
Oh, okay, that's great. I'll just talk to myself. We talked about the escalation sequence, right? What's the escalation sequence, guys? We're talking about reactivity. There you go.
I can see.
So look, number one, dogs are going to be looking around. So they go from a totally neutral space, then they look, they see a trigger, And then if it happens to get their goat, if it happens to be something that they find enticing or problematic, then they go lock and then start to load. And all of this, I'm giving you a very slow play-by-play here. I mean, this stuff happens in like a second, right? It goes from like, so it goes look, lock, load, launch, right? It's just an easy way to remember it. And my whole point with putting up the post saying go after the look, I did a very lengthy explanation this morning because some people were like, why would you, a lot of people, mostly trainers, had issues with me saying correct look. And the whole thing is that my posts, for the most part, are for owners. They're not for trainers. And if they are for trainers, I will say in the post, typically in the very beginning of the post, I'll explain who it's for. And so in this post, it was talking about owners with, what's the phrase I used? Owners with reactivity repeat offenders, right? So that frames it pretty clearly. We're not talking about trainers that have, years and years of mechanics and skill sets and ability to read a dog in a split second and go like, boom. I said in post, trainers talk about going after the thought. For an owner, that doesn't really make any sense because what trainers mean by go after the thought is go after this tiny, most subtle emanation of things shifting from the look into the lock and into the load. And so, wow, it's a loud car. So trainers will see that and they'll talk about, you have to go after the thought. What they really need to be doing is helping owners understand what they mean by that. It's like, you can't tell an owner to go after the thought because they're not going to know what that means. You have to give them very, very early, subtle signal changes that are going to happen with the dog. And then if the owner really cares about it, they can focus and practice and try and develop that skill. But the reason I said go after the look is because most owners are unable to develop that skill set unless they're wildly determined. They're not going to have incredible reaction time and mechanics to go along with things as far as using the tools and staying cool and calm under pressure. And then what's the other part I was going with?
Staying under pressure.
No, so oh man, I had one extra piece to that.
Road. I
You didn't even say the right sequence.
I keep wondering why my hair is like getting old. It got stuck under your arm.
So, okay. Anyways, back to the look, lock, load, launch. What I was trying to say is that most owners, when they actually notice something changing, this is the critical part. Why? Two pieces I'm going to put to this. One, there's no damage that's going to happen from correcting a dog. A repeat offender dog, reactivity-wise, has no business scanning around looking for dogs. Why would you be allowing a dog who's a reactivity repeat offender to be looking at dogs? It's none of their business. Focus on the walk. You don't need window shopping and looking for trouble. That's not what the dog should be doing. So the other part of it, which is the part I forgot a second ago, is going after the look for most owners actually be the lock. It'll already have transpired. It'll already have moved from a look, and then when they actually notice that look, it'll already be moving into the lock. And the space in between look and lock is like so small and really, really subtle and hard to read. So if we're going to give owners the opportunity to succeed with reactivity, we have to give them a black and white, clear guide in order to do it. As soon as you start to introduce gray areas, so watch for this and watch for this, and let them look. And if they don't load, or if they don't lock and start to load, then we can leave it alone. But if they do correct, what you end up doing is you're putting owners that don't have that deeply developed skill set in a space where they're under high amounts of pressure and probably patterned stress responses from having negative reactions with the reactive dog, trying to read a situation in a split second, and then almost always they're going to hesitate and they're going to miss the moment. The dog's going to get more intense, start moving up the escalation sequence. And then when they do go to correct, that's when we all hear, like, well, not worse. The correction made it worse. That's because the dog is moving up to the escalation sequence and already up here. Versus if you correct them really, really early in it, then the correction has a much better chance of de-escalating. So if you go firmer super early, you got a really good shot at defeating the reactivity. If you do what most owners do, which is the waiting game, they wait and watch. I've done tons of posts on this: too low, too slow, the waiting game. Don't go after the fuse, not the explosion. All of this stuff. It's all saying the same thing. Like, go earlier, sooner, 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 because most owners are going way too late and way too soft. So, anything in the old question department? No, cool.
The look no dog.
Lock.
Oh, Shannon just joined.
Hi, Shannon.
I think that's I can't see with my glasses. I need to be there.
We also posted about the double down from the Kansas seminar, and a lot of folks were asking about it because it was posted in that when I was talking the post I was talking about earlier in the podcast, which was the whole state of mind, like 1 through 12, and the double down was part of that. The double down was part of that, and a lot of people were like, "What's the double down?" So I just went through it and did this one session that we did with a super anxious shepherd. It was a shepherd, right?
Yeah, it was a shepherd.
Shepherd at, believe it or not, a PSA club in Kansas that we did a seminar at, and the dog was just didn't know how to trough, didn't know how to relax, and so we were using that dog and taught to double down. So if you double down looks like, you can just scroll through Instagram or Facebook and just like go down a few posts, a couple days, and you see what that looks like. Pretty lengthy explanation of how I feel about it. So,
Wonderful.
oh,
Okay.
yeah, is that it?
Yep.
No questions.
No.
We should probably give people a chance to like put questions in earlier, so we're not putting people under the gun to come up with
Yeah.
questions under pressure.
Brandon says, "Hello, fine folks."
Hello, Brandon.
Hello, Brandon.
How we doing?
Maybe we should put Brandon live on the spot and be like, "Come talk with us for 10 minutes."
I'm sure Brandon's got some interesting stuff going on. He's been doing a ton of writing, a ton of stuff, Substack stuff. I've never been to Substack, Brandon, so I'm gonna have to get over there one of these days and see your account and see what it's all about. I've never been there, but he's like a writing machine. He's posted, yeah. He's posted
Yeah, that was his wife who was writing his post.
No, I think she's trying to out you and undermine you.
I know that. I just felt that that's what they were doing together.
No, I think when I asked Brandon about some of the early posts, he said that his wife was like doing some of the stuff or helping with some of the stuff, but he's been writing the articles. He's a good writer. He's got a lot of things to say.
Yeah.
So, yeah. A lot of controversial things.
He says his boys are rowdy tonight. You know who we should call? Ghostbusters Sophia. Told her to put Sophia on the spot. And do a dog trainer live Q&A with us.
Call her, give her a hard time.
All right. I mean, if we don't have any questions, I would say
What time is it?
it's almost 6. And what we could do is for the next live, have people ask questions in advance, and also, what I can do is put everything live in advance, and then just come in and sit down and do it.
Mhm.
So I can start it at like 40, 20 minutes to do.
Let's see. I'll give people a few more minutes to come up
And
with
Brandon says, "I'm down, just let me know."
down for.
I'm not sure what the reference is to at this because we yeah the bitch. Yeah.
What's your language?
I didn't say that.
What's your language?
It was an oopsie.
Um,
Also, it's just getting used to sitting next to you since you've been working out like a machine. And it is really weird. Like I have to constantly move forward because you just get
I'm wearing like this Northwest like
no, it's not
padded
because of
outfits.
it's because you've been working.
Let's see what we got here. Here's a super important distinction that a lot of folks, I'll just fill some dead air here. So a lot of folks think of threshold manners where a dog doesn't rush out the door. You open, bring the dog up to the front door and you're going to go for a walk. And then the dog knows like, if they rush out, then you're going to correct them with a leash, or you can have them sit, or you're going to say wait, or whatever you think it is. And those are threshold manners before you can have a walk. And a lot of folks, if they have those looking super tight, they may even do stuff where they have the dog on the sit inside the house, door open, and then they walk outside holding the leash loosely and proof the dog like that. And a lot of folks will misconstrue or misunderstand threshold manners as being the same as the dog being threshold proof, meaning when no one's around and the door's open, will the dog run out the door? And a lot of folks are under the assumption that if they have super solid threshold manners, that the dog won't run out the door when the door's open. And depending on the dog, you might have a real softy, a dog that doesn't have a lot of prey drive or, like curiosity drive or anything like that. And they may hang, but what's really been taught is when there's a human standing next to you and they have you on a leash, it's very contextual, then this is the behavior that we offer. When there's no human around and the door's open because somebody forgot it when they're bringing groceries in or something like that, then you have a very different context, and a lot of dogs will just take off and go. And so there's a whole different protocol, whole different approach that I utilize in order to resolve that. It's not threshold manners. It involves like e-collar, long line, and teaching a dog that with you try and not be present. And I won't go into it here in full detail, but just know that it's a different thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So shall we cut it for today?
Sure. If nobody's got any
And
more.
I'm also curious. I think it was Caroline who said that she had trouble commenting last week, that her comments wouldn't go through. So I'm also curious if we should send
Are
everybody.
people having problems commenting? I wonder.
No,
No, Brandon's commenting though.
Yeah, I mean, some people have no problems, but I'm just curious if we should send everybody to Facebook instead of Instagram for questions. I just don't know.
So sick. So I wonder, is Brandon on Facebook? Or
On Instagram.
on Instagram? Okay, so Instagram's working fine though.
I'm just saying that's what Caroline says. She had trouble last week.
Caroline, have a word with her.
We'll see how it ends.
Okay. Well, if there's
I have a question about a safety we want to talk about.
okay, we will wait for your question.
It cuts you off if it's too long. Hello. We'll fit comment.
We'll break it up over a couple.
And let me know when you want to go live.
There you go.
It's like, let me have them. Even if it's another day. Yeah, let's definitely do another day.
Yeah.
And then for you two guys to schedule.
I was
You guys
thinking-
can pre-pick topics so that we don't make this a 3-hour show.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing, we're supposed to do me and Angie. So if anybody saw the Counter the Conditioning, actually a pretty clever title, Counter the Conditioning podcast with me and Angie Shields from Mighty Oaks Dog Training up here in Canada, not here, but up in Canada. We've done one. We did a second one, and Angie was in charge of capturing it on Zoom, and something didn't go right. So we did like a 2-hour podcast, and it's gone missing. It's disappeared. But I was thinking about having Angie and Brandon, and maybe we'll do this, kind of a three-way Zoom thing. Technology work. Why are you shopping for like dish soap and stuff like that?
Because we have it coming right now, and I couldn't forget that. I just got a notification. If there's anything else we need before they come. There's questions there now.
Yeah.
Are they all just coming through now? Look at this.
Maybe.
Even if it's another day. Just join your Patreon and seeing that you get other dogs. This goes against everything I've been taught, but I can't argue with your results. So I'm wondering why other trainers advise against it so strong when it clearly works great for you. It's a good question.
Yeah, well, it depends on who the trainers are. So if the trainers are positive only or force-free trainers, then that is absolutely part of their belief system, that you can't correct dogs for that because they're always going to put it in a fear-based category. You can't correct fear, and it's only going to make it worse. It's going to create a negative association. That's going to ruin your relationships. It's going to make the association with whatever the trigger is worse. It's going to exacerbate that, and it's going to make your dog hate you, or afraid of you. Like, fill in the blanks with whatever the worst outcome is. So if that's where they're coming from, then that makes sense because that's what their beliefs are. But none of that is true, and I can go like point by point how that is not true. And then if you've got balance trainers, there's a lot of weird, wacky stuff going on in the balance training world, where I think our friend Brandon here, I think he coined the term. Was it Brandon who coined the term?
No, it was me, but you keep saying it was Brandon. I don't know why.
Well, I think we've thrown it around. It's gotten different.
Purely positive balance trainer.
Yeah, purely positive or positive only balance trainer, force-free balance trainer. There's a lot of stuff going on in the balance training world that's starting to lean and put their toes in the water pretty deeply, as far as they're starting to borrow very heavily from that, and
very heavily.
Yeah, there's a lot of social pressure going on right now in the dog training world, and there's the whole dog training wars and all this stuff. So you've got your positive force-free side and their belief system, which is no corrections, positive only, force-free. Then you've got balance trainers that are trying to thread this needle, and I don't know if it's a marketing thing. Well, for some folks, it's going to be a marketing thing. For some folks, it's going to be a status and reputation thing to try and look more virtuous. For some folks, it's going to just be an ignorance thing. They've been told that, and they're just going to roll with it and just go. Me personally, I don't view much in the dog training world. I don't watch other dog trainers. I don't learn from them. I learn from observation. I learn from going out and doing the work and testing things and experimenting with dogs. And I don't mean recklessly. I mean very intelligently based experiments that I know are going to have no negative fallout. And then I just look for what works and what doesn't, what are the effects, what are the benefits, pros, cons, so on and so forth. And then I draw my own conclusions, and I don't care what the dog training world says, because if reality is saying, here's what is reality, then I'm like, that's what I'm going with. And if the dog training world is like, but it's going to do all this bad stuff, and I haven't seen that, then I'm absolutely not going to listen to any of that. So your question as to why have you heard that information so much? Like I said, it depends on which branch on the training tree you're hanging out on. So if we've got the positive force free, then we already know why that is. If we've got the balanced training world, then we have this whole kind of like weird moment that it's in, where it's almost like it's trying to update its reputation and be more sophisticated and more sciencey and softer and sweeter and all these different things, rather than honest, transparent, and effective. And so you're just finding a lot of people in the training world that are saying this kind of stuff. And so here's an awesome interesting moment. So I just explained to you how I discover what works and how I find my path through the dog training land just by observation. And you just did the same exact thing, right? You joined my Patreon, you went through videos, you've been told something, and you're like, but what I'm seeing doesn't hold up to what I've been told. Awesome. So that means that you've got an open mind, you're taking in new information, and you're resetting, recalibrating your thoughts, your beliefs about what's possible and maybe what you should even do or how you should approach things. So I've always corrected reactivity. That's the question, right?
Yeah, there's a couple more.
I'll get to those two.
No, it's from the same person.
Okay.
So the last scenario was I've been taught only to correct staring when it causes the dog to come out of heel position or if they're properly intensely loading. Do you think trainers who are against correcting looking staring cause it can create a bad association, just think that because they have bad timing? I mean, other balance trainers who still correct reactive dogs, just not for looking at other dogs. Only if it makes them mess up with like heel. But then you're correcting for the obedience, for the mindset.
Yeah. Um, so for one, a lot of people, I'm just going to be really brutally honest, a lot of people haven't thought very deeply about this. And so if you don't think very deeply about it, then that means you have to, I mean other trainers, and you have to outsource your thinking to other people that tell you how to think and what to believe. And so I spent hours and hours and hours not only doing the training, but then revisiting and exploring and then dissecting all of these training rules and traditions and laws and things like that, and trying to see if they stand up to scrutiny. And then when it comes to things like correcting for staring and negative association and all that stuff that's supposed to happen, and never seeing it over 17 years of doing this, I was like, okay, so I know it doesn't happen. Now I have to be able to explain it, which it took me a good couple of months to be able to really put it into clear language, which is the dog's negative association. The only thing that, so what creates the association with the consequence is what controls, what predicts, what stops, what avoids the consequence. Is it the trigger appearing? No. Is it the trigger's present? Is it the trigger's presence? It has nothing to do with it. It only has to do with how does your dog or the dog that you're working with react to the trigger. The dog's behavior controls the consequence. If the dog doesn't do the behavior, then the consequence doesn't happen. So the only association that the dog creates is with their own behavior, meaning they know that if they look over and load, correction, and then as soon as they stop doing that, consequence goes away. And then if they look at a dog and then look away like that, consequence never happens, right? So we can get into that at another time in a deeper fashion, but as far as I think we're getting into a little bit more detail of correcting for looking versus correcting for a dog starting to shift into the other.
Basically, she said either when the dog is staring too intensely or then starts breaking the heel position because they're looking.
Mm-hmm. So I just wrote about this today.
I don't know if you already mentioned this or not, but for me, when I'm walking a reactive dog and they look at another dog, I don't think of it as correcting for them looking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm correcting because I know, like, from mindset basically, because they're not just like, oh, hey, there's a dog there. Because if I'm walking a dog like that, or I can tell by the dog's body language, the dog is doing so much better that they can look without getting all tense.
But this is my main point. So what Marta's saying, this is somebody with 10 years of dog training experience. So what she just laid out makes perfect sense, and it's very natural for her. She can go out on a walk. She doesn't need a bunch of feedback and stuff like that from the owner and like about the dog. She's just going to go out with the dog. She's going to be able to read that in the moment, and then she's going to be able to react in the moment. The reason that I advise owners to err on the side of correcting earlier for the look is because, just like I was talking about it earlier, it's nearly impossible for owners to have that kind of finely developed skill set and timing under stress and all of that stuff. So that's one of the things, and it has no fallout, right? So like Marta was just saying, she's correcting her mindset. Like, what are you looking at? You don't need to be looking at that. But if the dog is super casual and she sees the dog's just kind of like this, then she's not going to care about it. But once again, we're talking about the difference between people that do this for a living and many, 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 many years of doing that, where they see subtle shifts super quick. And we're talking about owners that are trying to do their best with dogs while they're living a busy life, doing other things they're really, really good at, and dog training isn't their focus. So, but there's no downside, right? So even if you corrected a dog for looking at other dogs, like I almost wrote about this today specifically because it was really like annoying me, but so many people are implying that there's this danger, this risk, this undermining, this fallout that will occur if you correct a dog for looking. Like they'll be afraid of dogs. No, it just teaches the dog to mind their own business on the walk. That's the worst fallout you'll get, unless you're blasting the dog. If the dog, anytime it glances at something, you are at 100 and you press it hold. The dog's like, holy shit, I'll never look at anything again. Well, that's what you'll get. But if we're talking about reasonable, smart dog training here, then we're talking about a low correction where the dog's it's valuable enough for the dog to go, cool, got it. And they stop glancing, stop looking around, stop doing this window shopping stuff. So all you're really doing is teaching the dog, like, hey, we're on the walk. Don't be like this. Just be present with me. And then when it comes to some trainers saying, well, it's only for breaking heel, well, they shouldn't be breaking heel. If they do break heel, they're right on the money with that, because that's an indicator that the dog is tuning out mindset-wise, right? If they start to speed up, it's like one of the most obvious clues that the dog is somewhere else here. And then, of course, if the dog locks onto another dog and we start, ears change, forehead wrinkles, they start to huffy puffy and, huffy puffy, start to huff and puff, and their body language changes, tail comes up, it happens, the whole deal. Then they're saying correct for that. I'm saying, why are we allowing a bunch of smaller stuff to go on, and we're just going after? I think so many people are struggling because we have this bar that we're like, no, we can't correct for that. We can't correct for that. It has to be a committed thing that I'm seeing something that's truly naughty. It's like, no, if you've got a repeat offender with reactivity, then I would be going after things way earlier, and I would be giving way less wiggle room for any kind of looking around like that. So I think I went in depth enough on that.
Brandon says, like that.
Lovely. I like it. Only hang on a sec.
Yes. If they've already had training previously, do you start from scratch or build on that? Start from scratch.
So hang on a second. So we start from scratch as far as our program, but I will steal anything that the dog already knows. So if the dog has had a bunch of work, but never had any accountability, or the dog has had prior e-collar work and it's all the way at the finish line and there's all these other commands, I'll still train the dog through our system, or we'll train the dog through our system and do everything step by step. But if the dog already knows certain things, then I can, when I say steal that command, it just means I can utilize it already and utilize it with our program, and I'll just make sure that everything fits appropriately. But yeah, the overarching, that's not the right word. The short answer is yes, regardless of what the dog comes in with. Like even a lot of dogs come in and they've had multiple. I think about this all the time. They've been to multiple board and trains and have had God knows what kind of prong collar training and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, so you could go down the rabbit hole and be like, man, this poor dog, what does he know? How was he taught this thing? The best thing to do is just pave over all that stuff. Pave over it with a good, solid system of training that works really, really well. It's really, really fair, and just go like that and just read the whole thing. So,
as long as you understand the major differences between situational breakdown in the brain and how to read the dog, all dogs are different. Hands-on learning is the best method to be anywhere.
As long as you understand the major differences between situational breakdown, right? As long as you understand the major differences between situational breakdown in the brain and how to read the dog, uh, really hard to
There might have been a conversation between this person and tested out, find out how they could get it, because just attacking each other.
Gotcha.
The reward of correction is feedback, momentary feedback. That's different. That's helpful. Thanks. Interesting new way of looking at reactivity training. And it's
Cool. Yeah. So with reactivity stuff, I just think it's obviously like the scourge of the dog owning world right now. Like reactive dogs are everywhere, and it's probably the most common problem that people are dealing with. I just think people are making it way too complicated. Uh, Trying to diagnose if it's fear-based, if it's frustration-based, if it's, whatever, it doesn't matter to me. And that doesn't mean that I'm not tuned into the dog and not aware of insecurity, fear, and things like that in the dog. But the approach is still going to be the same. I'm not going to treat a fearful, reactive dog any different as far as the overarching approach. And it works exactly the same. And I don't mean it's a cookie cutter approach that you just force every dog through. What I'm saying is that the principles work no matter where the dog is coming from, mindset wise, but everybody's in this headspace of you have to get to the foundational emotional cause of why it's happening. It's like, for one, as if there is a foundational singular cause for it. Two, as if we can even know what those causes are going to be. It's going to be a giant stew of all sorts of different variables. It's going to be genetics. It's going to be personality. It's going to be training. It's going to be environment. It's going to be all this different stuff. And we're going to assume that we can get to the bottom of it. I'd love to know how somebody's going to get to the bottom of it, for one, because they can't. And then two, it's completely unnecessary. What you need to get to the bottom of is solving the problem and getting the dog through that. And that's how you get to the bottom of it. So I've got tons of fearful dogs. I just posted a video up about working with fearful dogs with e-collar stuff. And a lot of people are like, up in arms about you can't use e-collar with fearful dogs. I do it all the time. And I find it to be the best tool for that. If you know how to use it. Now, am I correcting them for being fearful and shocking them for being fearful? Of course not. But if you know how to creatively use the tools, then like the world's your oyster. There's so many things you can do. So, anyways,
I think something that people, because you know me, I don't really watch what other dog trainers do on social media, because I have way more important things to do than sit on Instagram and whatnot. But I was thinking about that yesterday, how for one, over like my few years of training, now I've seen just like different things come up and then they kind of just go away.
that's
Yeah, and then something new comes up and something else goes away, and there's a group of people who will always there's a group of people who start at some point, and then they'll find something new, and they'll find something new, and none of it is actually new. They just keep instead of feeling comfortable with what they see and watching it and just using their own observational skills to make a decision. But I feel like we're straying so far from what the dog ownership and dog training has been, because we are so focused on the cooker, the toys, and all this extra adding, instead of just like dogs are such like simple creatures, not in yet thinking and thought process and learning, but simple, just like people used to live in smaller towns, close to family, community oriented. Dogs used to live very just simple lives as far as like being around people, going places, and just hanging out. And now it's dog parks and adventures and coffee places that are just for like going to hang out with your dog and just do. And dogs have no way of self-regulating because they have so much input. Yeah, so then the only way to then more or less distract them because of how badly their brains have been damaged by all the input is by more input or by overriding it with drive. But that's not helping the core issue either. It's more quiet, more calm, more nature, like
less input.
Go in the forest with your dog for an hour and let them run around and don't talk to them. They'll have the best time of their life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
probably feel way better too.
I mean,
And Brandon says 100% Marta.
you
I said something smart.
getting the props. Um, so let me just say this.
Cat is screaming. Can we remove her?
Sorry, guys. So state of mind training tips. Number one, 2 to 3 hours of place duration daily. Number two structured walks in a heel. 90-10 means 90% structured, 10% free time to sniff and potty, broken up over the entirety of the walks. 2 to 3 hours downtime in a crate daily. A lot of folks don't get that, and so if the dog isn't sleeping or eating, some folks will have the dog sit in the crate and eat in the crate, but then they're out the rest of the time. Having dogs just have downtime in the crate is super valuable for them. Auto down on place and in the crate, because you can be in a crate or on place and absolutely not be relaxed. So we're looking for state of mind stuff. Train to double down for super anxious dogs. Number 7, correct crate and threshold brushing. Any kind of stuff like that. Let me get in, let me get out. 8, do not incessantly talk to your dog. 9, do not incessantly pet your dog. 10, don't use food/excitement to train. And a lot of people were freaked by that. But my whole point was try it. Just try it. Try doing something different than what everybody else is fucking doing out there and see what you get back. I've done tons of food work. I've done, existential food work where the dogs only eat while they're training. Their meals are while they're training. I don't like it. I use it for very specific dogs that are very, very like just mopey and absolutely devoid of motivation. Fair enough. But other than that, I prefer to have the dogs be in a space where they're not jazzed about the food, focused on the food, but they're actually like working with me in a calmer, lower key headspace. Number 11, correct roused chaotic behavior. 12, correct obsessive behavior. So,
can I just add to that?
Yeah.
I see real quick
Yeah.
because there was something that I noticed.
But
Before you, because you read the post, it's state of mind training tips, not how to live with your dog 24/7.
no,
Right?
it's for
But
dogs that are anxious and
But I wanted to
struggling.
point it out because people will hear this without paying attention to the first thing that you said
Mhm.
and then go, well, that's not a life word. I was like, no, it's not. That's to
It's-
help in a
it's-
very small part of time. But also, that's not 24/7 with your dog. It's state of mind tips.
It's state of mind training tips for dogs that need help. If your dog doesn't have a problem with arousal and settling, relaxing, and having a dysregulated nervous system, if your dog doesn't have that problem, you're great. If your dog does have that problem, like many dogs do currently, then all of this stuff is part of our program that we do that helps dogs calm down and reset and chill. It's why they do so well when they come out of here. They're like, oh my God, this doesn't even seem like my dog. It's like, we didn't do anything profoundly complex. We did a lot of simple, calming, relaxed, chilled out things. Did we hold the dog accountable? Of course. Did we teach the dog how to be fully off leash trained and on leash trained reliable? Of course. All of that stuff. But all of it has a focus on more calmness rather than this jazzed up thing, which is like, I hate to say, guys, but it's like the sport dog world is a very cool place as far as like if you're into that stuff, but it's moved into the pet dog world, and so you see it in all sorts of different spaces and um,
Training?
yeah, protocols, concepts, approaches, things like that, where
Or
they
living the life with your dog.
yeah, a lot of stuff. They've snuck a lot of stuff. I mean, maybe like some evil thing, but it's just the sport dog thing is great. If you do pet dog and sport dog, or you only do sport dog, like knock yourself out. I've got no problem with any of it. But what I've seen is so much. So we basically touched on two big things. We talk about what's gone kind of like wrong in the pet dog world. I would say what Marta and what Angie talks about a lot, which is just overstimulation and too many inputs. Dog needs to be stimulated. That's just a human thing. It's like, I want my dog to be happy, so I'm going to give them all of this stuff because it confirms to me or affirms to me that my dog is happy because I'm doing all of these things for my dog.
Micromanaging, teacher who should just be able to just like relax and
It's not
just
just micromanaging it like the management, but it's
micro
also
inputs.
yeah, but it's also overstimulating,
Yeah.
just constant stimulation. So we've got that on one side of things, and then we've got the sport dog stuff coming in as well, which is creating all sorts of amped up dogs. So if you think about it, it's really like these two worlds colliding. We've got too many inputs and overstimulation from just, let's just call it what it is, selfish self-absorbed humans that are like, I just want my dog to be happy, even if it makes him fucking, dysfunctional Rex. So we got this like, no, no, make them crazy and they need a snuffle mat or whatever the hell that stuff's called, and puzzles and because Rex isn't happy as he should be. And then we've got the sport dog world, which is all about drive and jack them up, like, yeah, let's go. And then boom, right? So it's why there's all of these different marker systems with constant sequencing of food rewards and things from the sport dog world. All of that stuff has come from the sport dog world. And it's nothing. It's great if the goal is to create what they want in the sport dog world. But if we want a different outcome in the pet dog world, we have to think about what we're using as far as what we're applying to pet dogs. And so what I see, and it really just became clear in this conversation, that it's like a collision of these two different,
It's also
things.
like one, the sport dog world is super cool, and I have great respect for people who are this dedicated to teaching their dogs things at such a high level because it's
Same.
really hard and it takes so much dedication and time and practice. And it's great for those dogs who are capable and also enjoy doing it.
Mhm.
There's some dogs who need it, they do better with that, but they can also specifically bred for that stuff, right? But then you get like your dumb chocolate lab, which is like yada yada yada, who's also not like a real lab we used to back in the day,
Mhm.
and they need very different things. So it's not so much that like the sports stuff is bad and whatever is
Just to
bad.
be clear,
I know
never
you.
said
I'm not
negative.
talking about what you said. I'm
Yeah.
just kind of adding to the conversation.
I just want to be super clear about that because
Yeah.
I'm not poo-pooing sport dog world at
No,
all.
but it's also like how back in the day, how competitive obedience things have been used to teach the general public
Sure.
to obedience.
Mhm.
And it also isn't functional.
Yeah.
It's like playing with your dog in a way that gets super revved up and variety isn't super functional. So we are not talking about that area, we're talking about general.
But that can be used. You can use super like jazz stuff like you drove when you're playing chuck it with the guys and stuff like that.
But that's just like play, right?
Yeah, but that's still like amping them up and like you'll do lots of stuff. But you also have a big contrast where that's like a small portion of their life. Things like this, and the rest of their life is like chill, calm.
Yeah, and I would say that my point is more about what I'm trying to add is things that are more it's like to me dogs naturally would do.
Mhm.
So my go-to would be taking them hiking and they can run through rivers and smell, pick up sticks, that kind of stuff, than external stimulation from humans.
Right.
That's what I'm
So
trying to
you, if I can interpret that, tell me if I'm correct.
from my mountain.
No, you're talking about like artificial
Yes.
inputs and stimulation rather than something natural that would actually connect with the dog at a deeper level, be more fulfilling, more healthy, and
Yes, and
true
then
way.
exactly. And the competition obedience, same thing. Like, was it helpful to push us to have because then dogs are living more like in the people's homes and closer than they were before.
Mhm.
Is it helpful to have sit so I can put your leash on down while I'm setting your food bowl down? Like, does it have value? Yes, but not to the degree that the competition obedience people use it for.
Right.
So it's basically just like levels and intensity of things, kind of that makes sense.
Yeah. When you see people and like, it's one thing if you want to have fun with it. Like, just to be clear, like if you enjoy like training the hell out of your dog and doing all sorts of fun stuff and like being able to like walk with your dog in an off the shield and then stay down plots and your dog, just like drops while you're still in motion. That's awesome. Like knock yourself out. But what we're talking about is average pet dog owner and what is functional, that's like Angie's terminology, functional obedience. Like what is functional, what is healthy, what is good, what is necessary. It's something that I think need to take a closer look at. And it's also why I'll catch a lot of grief on a lot of my posts because I don't focus on having the dogs amped up. So by contrast with a lot of other trainers' pages where it's all about the dog being like prancy and amped up, a lot of these dogs are calm and laid back because that's what we're training them for. Because that's how they do them.
So Brandon says unpopular opinion. You can correct the dog without diminishing drive, and it's something I've talked about a lot because and it's something that another trainer friend of ours who does competition sports. Said, I don't want to. I don't know if she wants to be there. I'm just going to leave it out. But she said basically the same thing. If you have a sport dog and you have to correct them for something, then they are not driving enough for what you're looking for. But she also lives with them like a sport dog, not like a pet dog, so it doesn't get wish-wash in the thing.
Yeah. So you're saying, can you clarify that for me one more time?
So Brandon says, unpopular opinion,
Got
you can correct the dog without diminishing drive. And I would say, yes, if the dog has enough drive to do the thing that you're looking to do. If you correct the dog and it does diminish drive, then the dog might not be the right dog for the specific
100%.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, so for truly like, for dogs that truly have the stuff, a lot of times they're going to use a prong collar and e-collar in order to boost the dog and give more drive to the dog. So they're actually using that stuff to supercharge the dog. They're not using it to diminish drive.
Yeah, 100%.
So but you have to have the right dog, which is kind of the whole point of this, which is like, what are the goals? What are we shooting for? What are the outcomes that we desire? And what are the kind of dogs that we're working with? And so we can't really apply sport dog stuff to your standard pet dogs. We can't apply pet dog stuff to your, there's some overlap, but you have to be careful with where that goes. Like when we did the PSA seminar, and we had a bunch of folks with high-end PSA competition dogs, but they were total maniacs when they weren't doing their thing. And even some of their performance stuff they were having issues with because they weren't using, they didn't have enough accountability built into it. And so once we added just a small bit of accountability with these PSA dogs, trust me, when I went to the seminar and I was the presenter, we were the only presenter, right? It wasn't a panel of 10, it was just us. And we were both very nervous of what we didn't have to offer these folks that are doing something completely out of our wheelhouse. And they had a fucking amazing time, and their dogs actually did far better in their actual their PSA stuff. They actually did better once we added this element of accountability, and they had been told that you can't correct, you're going to diminish drive. But like Marta and we were just saying, if you have the right dog, and Brandon was just saying, if you have the right dog, then it's not going to diminish the drive. And it didn't. All it did was it probably brought some of the kind of crazy arousal, right? So like I think folks will call that like leaking, where the dog is just like,
I think of it as like if you're pouring water out of the kettle. It's the difference between pouring into a mug or pouring it on the counter. It's all the stuff that's in them gets focused in the specific thing it's supposed to do instead of it just being everywhere.
Right. And so we did like some very simple stuff, and the dogs did.
And again, it wasn't about like because they weren't looking for more calmness, less anxiety. None of that was the goal. So we didn't apply like pet dog training to that. We basically just helped them how to laser beam the drive onto a specific task instead of just being all over the place.
I would add one thing though. What they did want is they weren't aware that they could have their sport dogs not be maniacs and drag them across the field. Right. And drag by the car, like the whole thing. And so we taught them that you can hold the dog accountable and keep the dog in a good headspace. And you'll actually, which is an interesting concept, if you think about the sport dog stuff, and there's a lot of folks that talk about this in that world, that by not letting the dog, what's the word I was just using? Not letting the dog leak all of this stuff, right, with all of this energy coming out, instead contain it. And then when you go to apply the dog to the actual task, they've got way more stuff because it hasn't been leaking out everywhere. All this other stuff. And so it actually helps the dog hold on to more stuff and then channel it into the actual activity that they're going to do. And so, once again, I'm by no means any kind of specialist or expert anywhere near that in the sport dog world, but I follow a couple of folks in that world that,
And we
that
have
do some stuff.
there's a couple of people that also I follow who do pet dog stuff, but also sports stuff.
Mhm.
And we both find the sports stuff super cool that they're doing, and lots of like cool in lessons, um, not lessons, but little insights that we've seen. But then we look at their pet stuff, and it's very different how the application of tools, e-collars, and play is very different for their sport stuff than their pet stuff.
For the most part, but I definitely see people that are doing
No,
both.
I'm talking about the people that we follow that we think just like that would be like, oh, this makes total sense.
Yeah. Well, there's one guy I follow who is, I really like a lot of his ideas and concepts. But the way he trains pet dogs is exactly how he trains sport dogs.
Oh yeah,
And the pet dogs look like the jacked up crackheads.
yeah,
But he's got a lot of really great stuff to say on a lot of different things. So as a smart consumer of social media, I take the things that I like and just like let them stuff.
I would think more than anything, you guys is watch your dog and see what they're trying to tell you, without being, I would say, without being emotionally.
Smart dog baked potatoes. Sorry.
Just observe your dog. If they're overstimulated for no reason, help them not to be. And if you're playing and the play goes overboard, help them not to go overboard, like too crazy, too much, and without being too emotionally invested that you don't make logical.
Yeah, I mean, dogs can get so aroused that they can make some dumb mistakes.
Yeah.
So just be careful with dogs that we're training here.
But it's 6:34 and we've been.
Okay, cool. Well, we can probably wrap this up.
Premier Canine. I was just talking about you guys.
So Brandon says we should talk about this in a live. I can share my grandparents' stories. Awesome. That would be super cool. Maybe we'll do that next time. Invite Brandon and we
can do a.
talk about monsters.
Yeah.
And make lots of enemies.
But at the end of the day, it's like everybody has to find their own way. Be kind to each other. Pave your own roads. Make your own observations.
Yeah. To echo what Marta's saying, like what I was saying earlier when I was
Rachel says, "Hi, Marta. I feel so special."
When I was answering that question, is had it.
I distracted you.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
My brain is such a wreck with focus. What were we saying? We were talking about
Doing three-way call so we can talk about.
Yeah. Oh no, you were just talking about
Be kind, pave your own path, make smart observations.
Right. So what I was saying earlier in this podcast was that I don't get my information. Like I see what's gone on. I've pulled from lots of smart people that came before me, and even smart people that are around currently. But at the end of the day, it comes down to my observations of reality. That's the best thing that I can pull from. It's the best thing that you can pull from. So try and just, like, it's super hard, but take in, like, best thing I can say is find people that you believe dog trainer wise are of super high character, will tell you the truth, that you can trust to be transparent, and at least that's a good start. They may not have the answers for everything. They may be wrong about it, but at least you know they're telling you the truth. And then pull from a handful of them, and then apply what you have, and then see what the results are, what the effects, what the outcomes are. Decide what you like and what you don't like. Move from there. Make that your new kind of like where your next base is at, and then take on some new information, whether that's new trainers or just diving deeper into the other trainers that you really like. Then, once again, apply deeply whatever these new concepts, ideas are, training approaches, tools, whatever it is. See what the results are. determine what you like and what you don't like, make that your next thing. That's now part of you, and then you go to your next level. And honestly, it's something I'm so surprised isn't more commonly taught. I've done long videos on Patreon or maybe they're on Facebook and Instagram as well. But maybe I'll repost it tomorrow. There's a really long video that talks about why I think so many people are missing so much is because they're drinking from this fire hose of dog training information that wasn't there 7 years ago, 6 years ago. I mean, it's exploded. Social media has exploded, and now there's so many different conflicting opinions, all this different information. And so people end up taking a bunch of disparate things, pulling here, sport dog, agility dog, pet dog, or 4,000 different pet dogs, or whatever, and then they take it, they put in this thing, and they try and make it work. It's like you've got way too much shit going on that you've got no baseline understanding of like, it's like an elimination diet. You need to simplify in order to figure out what's actually working, what's not working. Strip away a bunch of shit, focus on a couple things, try them, apply them deeply, find out what their benefits are, find out what their limitations are, and then go from there. And now you've actually got something you've decided, you've determined this is cool because I've seen it actually work with multiple dogs. Cool, I've got this. I don't care what is coming to my ears or what anybody else is saying. This now is a new baseline for where my head's at and my beliefs, what I've actually seen, observed, and experienced. Then move on from there. You need to simplify, turn the hose down, and just drink a couple sips from a couple places, from a couple of high character, high integrity, smart trainers that will dare to tell you the truth in this world where it's very scary to tell the truth for dog trainers. And once again, just take the stuff, take small little sips, and apply it, and then find out what's going on. You apply too many things, you won't know what's worked and what didn't work, and oftentimes you'll try and apply things that actually work against each other. Might work in one like dog training approach or system, but won't work when it's applied with a bunch of different stuff. So I don't want to get too far afield there, but that's something I feel very strongly about, and it will take you longer. This is an interesting point. It'll take you longer to get to where you want to get to as far as being a wise dog trainer, but you'll actually be a wise dog trainer built by your own experiences, observations, and beliefs, rather than a dog trainer who's just been fed a bunch of stuff and just regurgitates a bunch of information based on what other people have told you. Those are two very different things, and I would highly recommend that you go after the former rather than the latter.
And I would say for whoever has made it to our 1 hour and 40-minute live and still here is be kind to each other, because we can agree on a lot of things and disagree on a bunch of other. And at the end of the day, we all have shaped our own experiences and realities and lead completely different lives and have our own things going on, and can have different opinions and have different opinions without it having to be some gigantic ordeal. Is Kindred Canine
No, that's Kindred. Kindred, I think it's PDX.
Yeah,
I want to say there's a few different Kindreds.
Yeah. Brandon says we all grow together. That's right.
Yes, sir.
Like
Yes,
the weeds in the yard.
Yes.
All right. Let's
Okay.
close this out. Brandon, if you want to reach out to Sean so you guys can schedule something together, I can set it up.
An inflammatory podcast for in the training world.
I'm looking forward to that.
Bored of the way it is.
Yeah. And
Anyways, guys, thanks for everybody who hung out. Thanks for everybody who made it all the way through. I know it was slow going. Wow. I know it was slow going initially because we were trying to get questions together, but that will, as this gets more and more regular, as far as us showing up every week when we're supposed to, I'm sure questions will show up more. Anyways, hope you guys are good. Are we done? We can say goodbye?
yes.
Okay, guys, goodbye. Talk to you soon. See you next week.
Bye. Okay. I feel like we should have an outro music. Dun, 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 dun.